So this red car behind us, we got for John last year, and also at the time we had it was a silver NSX that was wrapped in a satin blue color.
I remember that
one. A lot of
well.
attention. It was a very fun car.
And then ended up showing up online. Remember?
Yes, absolutely. That was the second time we've actually had one of our NSXs show up in a fake
ads.
Ad.
Yeah, that's just a nature of the marketplace, even on Craigslist. I don't know why people. What do they gain from it? But we're not going to talk about that. No. So let's keep going.
And so we had some executives from Acura walking through our dealership. This was around the time that the new RDX came out, and walking through, they saw two NSXs sitting in our delivery bay, and they just kind of said, how are you guys doing with the car? What's people's take on it? You guys have two of them, so obviously you're selling them, you're doing stuff with them, and our general manager, Mike Murphy, basically just said, hey, we've got David. We basically just get the cars. He takes them out and kind of promotes them and puts people in the cars, and it's kind of a car that when you put someone behind the wheel, it speaks for itself.
And you've done a very, very good job with that here in Minnesota. As the ambassador of the NSX. We've gone to Cars and Coffee events. We've gone to Minnesota Supercars Saturdays, and I always see you with one of the NSXs and showing people around. You've even hosted the NSX group to come and actually test drive the vehicles.
Oh yeah, I've had days where I've probably run 20 or more test drives in an NSX.
Wow.
And for me, it's kind of an important thing of when you test drive a car like this, you don't want to go around the block 20 miles an hour. And obviously, there's only so much you can do on the street, but it's about understanding what the car can do. And so we've got fortunately we're kind of right by a freeway, so we have some nice entrance ramps and some ways that people can really experience. And every single person, whether it's guys that are driving classic 911s or guys that are driving Aventadors, every single person that drives the car comes away and says, that was better than I expected. And it's always a very positive reception. We learned that very on that you give someone the opportunity to drive a car like this, and they're of course going to say yes.
Sure.
And so you really have the opportunity to kind of change some people's mind if you give them a great experience. And for the NSX, it's something that we kind of saw. The guy who's looking to spend $200,000 on a car probably isn't walking into our showroom. I have to steal that guy away before he walks into a Porsche or a Mercedes showroom. And so that's where we've really just been trying to get these cars in the dealership, get them out in the world, get people in them, get kids in them. We do a couple of parades in our area, just get the car in the world. And that's something that we see you doing as well with the NSX. Bringing it out, you did the charity event where kids got to sit in the car and get a picture taken, and you donated some money for that. And so these cars are all about being shared with people. And so really, as the dealership, I have a unique opportunity to be able to share them with people that may never have the opportunity to own one, but then also provide people with the experience that may consider owning one for themselves.
Oh, absolutely, and it could be 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road, or it could be an impression that you left on an 8-year-old.
I still remember one of the first cars that I saw that got me into cars. It was an all black, probably around the 2009, 2010 Audi R8. And I was walking out of a Golf Galaxy store and I just saw this thing in the parking lot. I'd never seen anything like it. I was maybe 12 or 13 at the time, and I just stood there kind of staring at it. And a gentleman came out, saw me looking at it, let me sit in the driver's seat, and just that experience always stuck with me. And so, for something like this, it's always, if I see someone taking an interest in the car, it's, hey, do you want to sit in it? I've had a couple of, I had a young photographer I took for a ride on his birthday, of course with mom's permission, but she followed behind us, and just those memories that you can give those kids, they last a long time. And for me, that was, I look back now, maybe where the passion started. And so, if we can get these kids passionate about cars at a young age, it's good for the community.
Yeah, and part of that ownership experience and driving the vehicle is sharing it.
Yeah.
Not only with friends and families, but strangers and children.
At the gas station on the way here, I had 2 people come over. Can I take a picture of your car? Absolutely. They want to talk about it. They want to know what it is.
Right.
And it's one of the fun things about owning a car like this.
So as appreciative as I am of David being an amazing ambassador for the Gen 2 NSX, he's only able to give people glimpses of the vehicle, maybe at minutes at a time.
Yeah.
If they're test driving the car, it could be up to 20 minutes at a time. But if you read online reviews or watch the online videos over and over again, you'll find that reviewers who spend more and more time with the car, and I'm talking about hours as opposed to just 20-minute segments, fall madly in love with the car and really get to understand the unique dynamics of the car in how it was built as an everyday supercar. I've got a Ferrari 458 as well, and it's a very, very different vehicle. My understanding is that when they built and concepted the Gen 2, they were basing it off of other cars, using it as references, and the 458 was one of the references. But they're vastly different cars.
Oh, yeah.
You can't even compare it. And I drove the 458 to Chicago, and I was quite uncomfortable about halfway there. This one, I can confidently say I can drive to Chicago without much issue.
I've done 2 300+ mile road trips in NSXs. One, I think each of them, maybe stopped once or twice for gas or a short break, but it's definitely a car that it's not going to beat you up. And you're also not super worried about getting stranded out in the middle of nowhere somewhere on a road trip.
That Acura Honda reliability. So it has, kind of a split personality. It's got a GT type feel in that when you have it on quiet or sport mode, it's comfortable. It doesn't drone on you. It's got all-wheel drive for that confidence-inspiring handling. But then if you want to take it up a notch, you can go to Sport Plus or you can go to track mode, and it's going to, liven things up a lot more. And you're well into the supercar territory. So it's more likely to outdrive you than you can outdrive it.
First thing I tell people about the NSX is that I'm not the best driver in the world. I have no problem admitting that. I know I'm far from it. The NSX is a car that I can get behind the wheel and I have the confidence like I am one of the best drivers in the world. And that's something I think that's really special for someone to get in a car and have that kind of confidence. And it's a testament to how the car was engineered. And the hybrid system I think plays the biggest role in that.
Torque vectoring?
Yeah, the torque vectoring, the way the car turns in, the way that you can kind of modulate the throttle and kind of change your positioning mid-corner. It's a stable car through corners. There's very little, if no body roll through those corners. And it's a car that at the flick of a switch, you can really switch personalities, which is a great thing for someone who maybe doesn't have the opportunity to own multiple supercars. Someone who can own maybe a Ferrari for their, kind of more hardcore weekend car, and then have something that's more of a GT, an Aston Martin, or something a little bit more comfortable, a little bit more livable on a daily basis. The NSX is really doing a good job of blending all of those things together. And that's the hard thing to show on a 20-minute test drive, because I'm trying to show you how different the car can be with the different personalities. And so while you might have a 20 or 30-minute test drive, you might get 5 minutes of the car in this personality, and then we flip a switch, and then you get 5 minutes in this other personality, and then you're feeling kind of the different things that it can be.
You almost need a whole day in it.
You really do, and it's something that we would love to be able to do. We've talked about doing some more events for owners here in the cities, and it's something that just the more we do, the more interest we get in the car. It's something that we saw personally. If we let the car sit on the show floor and don't really pay it any attention, it's going to continue to sit on the show floor.
Right. You have to be active.
We have to be active. We have to show that we're passionate about cars ourselves. We're enthusiasts ourselves, and share that with other people. And we want to support the community as much as possible. Obviously, we want to sell a few cars along the way, but it's just been a great opportunity to be able to do some of that stuff.
I think we want to sell a little more than a few cars.
Yes.
We know that the NSX sales haven't been as strong as many of us would hope, but for those lucky few who do have it, they're extremely ecstatic about having it in their garage and being able to take it out. Speaking of new versus used, so first came out in 17, we're in 2020 now. This car's been out there. Some are going to be coming back on lease return. There are used models already available that people can purchase. So what are you finding in terms of new versus used car sales for specifically the Gen 2 NSX? Are people preferring the used ones, or are they going for the new?
I think it's interesting that people would look at the used values and potentially say, well, that's a good price, I can get into one for that. I personally think that the used market is holding a little bit higher than I expected it to right now. I would say to get a 2017 with about average miles, you're going to be in about the 115 to 120,000 mark.
And what's the average, like 5,000 miles a year?
I would say most of those cars are going to be under 10, somewhere between 5 and 10,000 miles.
Okay.
There's the rare car that might have 20 or 25,000 miles that'll pop up for 105 or 100 grand. I haven't seen anything that's not been in an accident sell under 100,000 yet. But some of those higher mileage cars are starting to creep into that area. The interesting thing with Acura is, a lot of people that are in the space know that there's a large incentive from Acura if you purchase a new one. And so the interesting kind of concept when you look at that is if you take more of a base car, so around 160,000 MSRP, doesn't really have any performance differences from something that might be loaded up in over 200 grand. Really the only performance thing you can get on the car is the carbon ceramic brakes. Everything else is pretty purely cosmetic.
And that's what, $15,000 difference?
Carbon ceramics are right around 10 grand.
10 grand, okay.
And so if you get a more base car around 160, and then you start to factor in some of the discounts that you can get from Acura, you can get a brand new car, down in pretty much the 130 range, and sometimes even lower than that, depending on how long the dealer's been sitting on it. And so a lot of people look at that and say, would I rather have a brand new car with full warranty, current model year? There were some updates to the car since it was initially released. So 2017 and 18 were kind of the same, and then they did some updates for 19 and 20. Suspension updates. The biggest one was the tires, which if you own an older car, you can very easily get the new tires on that car and notice a big difference.
And those were the Conti 7s?
The 6s, I think, are the new ones. So it initially, I think, was 5s.
Those are the 5s? I thought they were 6s and then they moved to 7s. Okay. But regardless, what he's talking about is in 17, it came with a set of Continentals that a majority of 17 owners disliked tremendously.
Even on a short test drive, you can tell that on the limit, the tires are giving out before the car is.
They're not very good, and they're supposedly, more of an all-season type performance tire.
They're for what the car is meant to be used for, which is maybe more of your
spring to fall.
And a little more comfort, a little bit less road noise. Some of those kind of characteristics were built into that tire to kind of match the car. But then they found that when you are in some of the more Sport Plus and track modes, that's kind of an easy thing to look at and say, well, those aren't really living up to what the car can do on that spectrum.
And on the 17s, you had the option of the Trofeo Rs.
Yes.
Which is a more track-oriented tire.
Very few people went with those tires. I would say, I don't have the numbers behind it, but I would say less than 5 or 10% of cars came out of the factory with those Trofeo Rs. I very rarely see those on a car. So, the changes to 19, suspension changes that were fairly minor, but I've yet to actually drive a 19 or newer, so I can't speak for myself. But everything that I've heard has been that it's a little bit firmer, and that the tires, they make a big difference. I think the car overall was about 1.5 seconds quicker around the test track with those changes, which I think the test track was fairly short, so 1.5 seconds was a pretty big difference.
And I can probably attribute a lot of that to the tires. The other suspension adjustments are probably pretty good, but tires, I mean, they're the thing that's actually touching the ground. And I'm pleased that Acura actually does listen. And they take feedback from owners. And they make those changes in subsequent model years.
And they even take feedback from us, from dealers. We're constantly being asked things about the car. What are we hearing? And they're very open to hearing things because we're on the front lines hearing things from customers. So it was interesting. I was at a big dealer meeting this was in New York, and they had an NSX inside, and I had some of the kind of heads of Acura. John Akita was there. Some of the other product guys were there.
These are top guys in Acura.
Yeah, John Akita's kind of he was vice president for a while. He's kind of now stepped back as, I don't remember exactly what his title is, but he's the guy for, the launch of the new car. He's going to be the guy on stage talking about it.
He was at Monterey Car Week for part of the reveal for the TLX Type S.
And he's a passionate guy. He really is very product focused, and he's been doing some great things for the brand since he's been in that position. He came from an engineering background. And so, just standing around the NSX, and I just said, hey, can you guys come over here and I want to show you something on the car. And the car had all the carbon fiber options. It had every option on the car. And you'll notice on this one behind us, the side blade in carbon is a matte finish. It's a dry carbon, whereas the roof is a gloss carbon. And I just looked at them. I said, if you're going to offer both carbon options, let the customer pick, because you're seeing people that may not want to get the carbon roof if they have a carbon wing, because one is a gloss carbon and one's matte. And instantly I had 4 or 5 engineers oh, what is he talking about? Oh, he's pointing those out.
Well, I'm sure they would have noticed that. I mean, visually, it's easy to call out.
You would think. And everyone was like, no one's pointed that out to us before.
And that black roof is a heritage component from the Gen 1. Because the early model NSXs had the black roof. So that carryover, I thought, was part of that lineage. People do complain that there isn't enough lineage that came through, but these are experimental type cars. And
absolutely.
So I think they've implemented as much experimentation as you could, especially with the hybrid drivetrain.
And with that carbon then for 2019, they actually changed it now. So every exterior carbon piece would be gloss. So whether you do the carbon sport package for the rear diffuser and the side diffuser and the front blade and the spoiler, everything is gloss on the outside of the car, so it all matches.
And I know for some owners, they've mitigated that themselves in the aftermarket world through PPFs, paint protection films. So you can either go matte finish or gloss. So you can enhance it any way you want in order to make it look consistent.
But I think it's one of those things that, is with Acura, they spent some time away from the supercar world.
A long time.
And it's changed a lot since they were last in it. Now everything is about, you look at the Porsches, you look at the McLarens with MSO, everything is about these very, very fine details. And I think that's something that Acura is learning more and more. People want to really pick those details and make the car their own. And if you give people the option to do something, they will take it. For the most part, unless
it feels custom. It feels like they're being heard.
It's your own. The last thing anyone who spends a couple $100,000 on a car wants is to pull up and see the exact same car somewhere else and just think oh man, mine's not unique anymore. And so the more options that you can give people, the more you can differentiate between those cars, the better for the owners. And so, I'm hoping to see some more of those things added. I've been really vocal about wanting things like maybe a titanium sports exhaust as a factory option, offering some more materials and color options on the interior as well, to allow some creative combinations, whether it be through stitching or different materials, aluminum versus carbon fiber versus wood, or whatever you might want on the interior of your car.
Don't choose wood.
No. Don't choose wood in this car.
But, not on this one. Maybe on a Mercedes or something.
Yeah, absolutely. But just allowing people to really personalize some of those smaller details.
Yeah, and we're hoping to see maybe a horsepower bump. We know that through the electronic drivetrain that there may be opportunities with the battery system to be able to pump out a little bit more power. Science of Speed has done a nice job with things like the downpipes, the race exhaust, JB4 Tune. So getting it almost up to about 700 horsepower, which makes a dramatic difference to the vehicle. There's also other aftermarket parts like the Sprint Booster, which enhances the throttle response. Doesn't necessarily give it more power, but it makes it feel like you're driving something that's about to bite you in the butt.
It feels, and if you watch even the Sprint Booster videos where they kind of show the response of the throttle opening up for the pedal response is almost instant, whereas factory sometimes there's a bit of a delay there. The NSX is a fairly sensitive when you get into the Sport Plus and track modes. If you're on a bumpy road, I don't know if you've ever noticed this, like on a bumpy highway and you don't have cruise set, your foot will sometimes just barely tap the throttle when you hit a bump, and you'll feel the car kind of lurch. It's a pretty sensitive throttle when you're in Sport Plus or track mode, which I'm pretty much Sport Plus and manual mode all the time when I drive. My favorite thing to do is throw it in quiet mode when you pull up into a car show, and everyone is kind of like,
they're just wondering,
what's going on?
Is it on?
You get looks. It's one of my favorite things to do in the car. But I think there's some things that they can do to this car for the future. The aftermarket has been great. I know it took a while for us to see some of those things, like the JB4. I think that took almost 2 years before some of that stuff came out.
It took a while. There were companies that were offering tunes, but the key was, we wanted it to be reliable and consistent, and not hurt the vehicle in a detrimental way. Science of Speed, I think, does a very nice job of that. They won't release a product until they feel confident in it, and so there are many vehicles running JB4s right now without any problems.
Yeah, absolutely. I had my first experience driving one with the JB4, and it's a noticeable difference for sure. When you start to combine all of these performance things together, it is a noticeable difference on the car.
So we're gonna, since we're talking about mods, we're gonna have to, of course, talk about reliability. Honda and Acura vehicles are very, very well known for their reliability, and being able to customize it and tune it without negatively hurting the overall reliability is something that's still important to us. We want to be able to have more fun with the car, but my opinion is that Acura and Honda generally are very conservative in how they deliver their vehicles, because they want it to last for a long time. So they're not going to stretch the limit right off the bat. So there's room to play with. And so as the car now has been released for 3 years, people are tuning it, having a great time with it, and even those owners that are not tuning it, what are you finding in terms of service? Are people coming back with broken issues? I know there are some TSBs for the car, but you would expect that for first model years. But Acura has been great about issuing those and getting them taken care of right away. But what are you finding in terms of overall reliability for the NSX?
I've personally at our dealership, we haven't really had any major complaints. We haven't had someone coming in with an issue that was something we couldn't take care of. Most of it has been, maybe small damage from something that they might have hit or done. We had one that hit a deer, and that was not fun. And so, in terms of servicing, other than performing some of those, service bulletin items, with there was a thermostat, there was an issue with the third brake light, there was the fuel tank recall. Getting some of those performed is really the majority of what we've seen. Everything else has just kind of been alignment, oil change, inspections, things like that. And so I've definitely read stories out there of people that have had issues with their car, but us personally, we haven't really seen a whole lot here in Minnesota. I think you may be seeing it in some of these areas like California, where there's a more dense population, a lot more of these cars sold down there. But I think the overall experience with the car has been pretty good. Really, the only thing that seems to trick these cars up is if they sit for a while without a battery tender, but that's any new car. The battery, it is a hybrid, but the 12-volt battery system is very sensitive in these cars. And if that even has a slight change in voltage, they like to throw all sorts of error codes.
And this is not unique to the NSX. I mean, you basically always want to keep it on a tender, but any supercar is highly sensitive in terms of the electronics and ensuring that the battery is putting out a proper voltage so that it can run through a full systems check. If it runs a little bit low, you'll see these little errors and then you'll freak out because, oh, a check engine light. And the biggest fear for a supercar owner is how much is it going to cost to fix that check engine light, because you don't know if it's a small issue or a large issue. Fortunately, with Acura, there are many dealerships, you know, surrounding the area. You probably have 2 or 3 of them, so they're within driving distance. But if you own another supercar, for example, a McLaren, a Ferrari, Lamborghini, there may not be an official dealer close to you. So you have to deal with things like transportation. Somebody will come pick up the vehicle. They may have to drive it 5 or 6 hours just to diagnose it. So you have to pay $1, maybe $1.50 a mile just to get it transported back. You know, fortunately with the Acura, you can drop it off. They'll give you a loaner vehicle. They can take a look at it. And of course, with the vehicle being new, everything's still going to be under warranty.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, Acura, on all of their cars, well, it's under 40 or 50,000 miles, you get free roadside assistance. They have a special NSX hotline, so if you're having an issue with your NSX, you can get a free tow to the nearest dealership. And if they know it's an NSX, they're going to send a special truck to make sure that your car is taken care of.
Good.
And so that's a fantastic thing for them to have. Acura just recently came out with an official certified pre-owned program for the NSX. Now that we're starting to see some of these cars that are going to be coming off lease, I think Acura is gearing up to allow dealerships, when those cars, if they do get returned, to certify those cars, sell them with some extensions to their warranty.
Good.
And then Acura has also now rolled out an extended warranty plan that you can get through your Acura Care for these cars, where you can go out to 10 years.
Yeah, that's a long time.
That's a long time. You know, most, I think, owners in this supercar kind of realm maybe keep their car for a couple of years before switching it out for something different. But for those guys that are looking to hang on to this for a long time and not have to deal with some of those headaches, it's nice to know that that's an option. It's relatively inexpensive. I think to go out, 10 years, you're maybe in that $5,000 or $6,000 territory, which is not bad at all for a car this caliber. I've seen, Audi Q5s that a warranty costs that much. So
that's a different kind of car.
Yes.
I think it's a testament to Acura in terms of how confident they feel in the car if they're willing to offer an extended warranty on it up to 10 years. Because they're going to be on the hook for it in the event that something happens. So maybe that money is well worth it, but it's also a sign that this car is probably going to be pretty solid. My ownership experience with the car has been amazing, and I wasn't quite sure how I would be taken care of at the Acura dealership, because you think, why am I bringing a supercar to an Acura dealership? But lo and behold, they take care of Acura NSX owners to the highest level. I have a direct line to the service manager, and we text each other often, chatting about NSX related stuff. But I feel like a part of the Acura family. So I'm not just your basic customer. And whenever there's an opportunity to have the car serviced, they are able to get me in immediately, provide me a very nice loaner vehicle. So I've been able to test drive some of the other models within the Acura lineup, and they're impressive. But I've had other luxury performance vehicles, and they're not all the same. I mean, you would think I've had a P car, and I wasn't taken care of to the same level as the NSX, to my surprise. But it was okay. But Lexus, I think, does a terrific job of customer service as well. So I'm accustomed to a certain level of care. And Acura absolutely met that expectation.
And we're as a dealership now. This is may even be news for you as part of the club. But we're sponsoring the local NSX club. I believe we have right around 50 members total of owners of both the Gen 1 and the Gen 2 NSX. We rolled out a program this spring where we're going to do a VIP service experience once a year for NSX owners. So any of our owners, you'll get a little black card, and you can use that card. We'll come out to your house, pick up your NSX, leave a loaner in the driveway, bring it in, service it, and when it's done, we'll bring it back to you. And so we'll do that up to a 100-mile radius of our dealership.
That's far.
And
that's a long day for you guys. That's a 3-hour round.
And so it's something for us that we want to make sure we're taking special care of those owners, because they're a great thing for just the brand. When people see these cars out and they ask, what is it? And you tell them it's an Acura, they kind of get the surprised look on their face. They're not expecting it. It's good for the brand. And so if we can have those owners out there, happy with our dealership, make sure we're taking care of them, that's an important thing to us as well.
Yeah.
And so we're really excited about rolling that program out this spring for you guys.
Well, keep up the good work. I think most of the guys that are in the MNSX group are really proud to be Acura owners. Many are longtime Honda owners.
Oh yeah.
So we're loyal to the brand, and we're hopeful that the brand is also loyal to us. Speaking of loyalty, just a little quick comment, and I'm sure that Acura has received some of the feedback. Those early adopters of the 2017 NSX, paid MSRP, and some even a little bit more than MSRP. And when units weren't moving as quickly as we had hoped, there were incentives and discounts that were made available, and they were tiered, from 10 to 20 to 30. And it was a bit of a sucker punch, to the gut of the current owners. But we understand that this also happens not only with Acuras, but it happens with some of the other luxury brands, Lamborghini, McLaren, even Audi. So yes, we cry foul, but if you go across segment, the same thing was happening. It does create better deals. It puts more NSXs out there. It creates, again, buying opportunities for the used car market in several years. So I understand the need to do that. They have to be profitable as well. And putting together a PMC factory and a brand new model is not inexpensive to do.
Not at all.
And our hope is that they will continue building variants of this model. So moving on to my next question, which is probably one of the most popular questions I've received to date and one of great interest to me, is expected changes for 21, model year 21, and then future. Generally the models like the Type R aren't typically available until the end of the life cycle of the NSX. So what can you share with us for 21?
There's not a whole lot in terms of what's been shared with dealers. There's certainly rumors out there about some potential changes. I think those rumors have been out there ever since the car came out in 2017, so it's hard to kind of sift through what might be real and what might not be. The really interesting thing about the 21 model year is that the PMC just reopened this week. The PMC was shut down, and so they have to finish producing the PMC MDXs before they can actually continue producing orders of the 2020 NSXs. And so I'm not sure how the pandemic might impact any changes that they may have planned to roll out for 2021, if those will still come, or if those may be pushed off, yet another year.
That's possible, because if you go back to the Integra Type R, there was a year that it wasn't produced. And so it's very possible you would have, is that correct? I think that is true.
I think you would, that's a little before my time.
I'm going to double check that, and I'll edit it if I need to, but I want to say there was one model year that it wasn't produced, and there could be a gap year, right? There is no 21.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens. I think there's a lot of talk about some cosmetic changes to the car. I think that was talked about down in Monterey, which you were there. But I think there's been some discussion about some cosmetic changes and potentially getting rid of what everyone refers to as the beak. They tried painting it, potentially bringing the looks of the car a little bit more in line with now where the rest of the lineup is. When the car came out, the lineup was kind of split. The MDX was the first car to kind of get the new grille, and now the entire lineup has been changed over to kind of the updated and new styling. So there's been some rumors about some potentially cosmetic changes, and I'm hoping with those cosmetic changes, some of the stuff we talked about different options on the car become available. I've also been very vocal about upping the hybrid power. I think the biggest complaints that I've heard, whether it's in person or over the internet about the car, is why is the car a hybrid if it still has very comparable performance to something like, say, a GTR or an R8, where they're in the similar category and in a similar price point? Why would I buy a car that is a hybrid, more complex? Some people view it as more things to go wrong.
True.
And so, the benefits currently to the hybrid system are more to do with your handling, and we talked about that confidence earlier. The hybrid system gives you a ton of confidence when you're going into a corner. When you're launching the car, I don't think I've ever spun the wheels trying to launch the car. And so it has a tremendous amount of grip, specifically laterally in those corners. And so I think, to me, the engine was made by Cosworth. I don't think it's the easiest thing in the world for Honda to go and make changes to that engine platform, because it was all designed with Cosworth.
And because it's a Cosworth engine, if you blow that thing, be prepared. It's going to cost you an arm and a leg to replace.
Yeah, maybe 2 legs.
Yeah.
I've heard what it costs, and it would not be fun.
Yeah.
And so, to me, I think the easiest way to really improve the performance of the car is to up the horsepower of the front electric motors. So,
well, it's got 3.
Yes. So you have your 500 horsepower twin turbo V6. You have an electric motor that serves mostly as a generator, but also does some torque fill. That's between the engine and the transmission. And that engine is, or that motor is right around like 42 or 46 horsepower. And then you have 2 electric motors up front. And each of those are, I want to say, about 36 horsepower. So if you add all those numbers up, it's over 600. The problem is the electric motors make their peak horsepower at a lower RPM than the twin turbo V6. So total system power is 573. But if you look at some of the percentages of, okay, so realistically we have about 540 horsepower on the rear axle of the car and about 70 on the front axle. So it's an all-wheel drive car, but there's a big difference in how much power is being delivered to each axle.
Yep.
You look at some of the electric motors that are being used in these various cars. Tesla's done a tremendous amount with very powerful electric motors. Now you're seeing Porsche with the Taycan having some very powerful electric motors.
It's almost ridiculous speeds.
I would love to see, rather than those being 36 horsepower peaks, make them 75, make them 100. If you have 200 horsepower on the front axle of this car and a little over 500 on the rear axle, that's suddenly a very quick car. It takes what's already a car that can hold its own in its segment, and would take it to being a segment
to
leader.
A new stratosphere.
It would, and that's the biggest gain is also from those electric motors. If you give the car 100 more internal combustion engine horsepower, it's a decent change. But you give a car 100 more electric horsepower with how that torque is delivered low end,
instant.
You're going to see a significant increase in your acceleration and some of those things. So for me, the way that I view it, the performance per dollar that you would get if Acura were to put some of those systems into the car, there's plenty of room in the front of the car. If they were able to do that and bump that horsepower up on the front, not only does it improve acceleration, potentially improve your top speed. I'd love to see that number ultimately over 200. I know that's a big kind of mark in the supercar world of having that top speed over 200 miles an hour. I just think overall it would be a very good thing for the car. And this is maybe a smaller thing that someone who's driven the car on a track might know, but in some of the faster corners on a track, the front motors aren't really able to keep up with all the horsepower on the rear axle. And so the car can have a little bit of understeer going into some of those faster corners on a track. If you're able to up the front horsepower, you now have more power that's able to do torque vectoring. You can have more powerful torque vectoring. So if you're able to put more power on the front axle of this car through those electric motors, you get what's already very good handling turned into some of the best handling that you can have. You get very good performance and acceleration turned into some of the best performance and acceleration on the market. And you can do that without having to completely change your combustion engine layout. It can all be done through batteries and electric motors. To me, I think that makes the most sense in terms of how can we take the car to the next step.
And if Acura were to do something like that, they could take this gap year to make that happen.
Absolutely.
Because some of these types of developments do take time. Even if they go from just doubling the horsepower to the front, can mean a lot of engineering. They have to modify the computers.
The tuning system of how torque vectoring is delivered.
Right.
That all completely changes. The tuning system for how it integrates with the rear. The thing they did a really good job with on this car is that they tuned it so that right as the electric motors are starting to fall off is when the turbos are kicking in and you're at boost. So there's no switch over or delay from your electric power to all of a sudden, the V6 kind of taking control and propelling you. Even between shifts, it's got a dual clutch transmission, it shifts very quickly. even between shifts, you have just a little bit of a nudge from those electric motors, kind of keeping your momentum going forward.
It's very smooth.
You're never not accelerating
Yeah.
in the car.
Yeah.
And they did a phenomenal job with that. So there is a significant amount of work that goes along with changing any of the hybrid system or the electric motor system in the car. I see that as the most beneficial thing to this car. And then it completely shuts down the argument of, well, I'll just go buy an R8 because it has a V10 and it sounds better and it does, the same performance. It's now, well, that car, maybe you buy it for the sound of a V10, but it's slower and it costs the same. So, it gives you that performance.
One other thing that can be said about the R8 is the quality of the interior.
Absolutely.
It's gorgeous. I mean, the Audi, hands down, does a very, very nice job.
I'm actually even kind of curious to know, as someone who owns the car, what are some of the maybe things that you've looked at and said, hey, they could make small improvements here, or maybe a few other places?
So I'm also an administrator for the Gen 2 Facebook group.
Okay.
And so I get to see a lot of feedback from actual owners that are willing to talk about their experiences. And some improvements that I would have Acura consider for 2021 or perhaps even 22, if there's going to be a gap year, is an iLift or some type of front lift option.
Yes.
Because the Acura NSX is a bit low. We've scraped. Science of Speed does offer a guard and armor for the front, but if you don't have that, you're coming off the showroom floor, taking your baby home, come up the driveway just a little bit too fast, you can hear a scrape that you're not going to want to hear. So having a lift option, and lift options are generally pretty widely available for a lot of supercars. So that'd be something that would be nice to consider for 21 or 22. Another consideration would be, of course, power, but there are some power options right now, but having that power come from the factory reliably, I think, is always desirable.
Warranty-backed power is something to be.
And again, I understand that Acura is not going to go bonkers with the power, but even a bump in power of 20 horsepower, 30 horsepower, that helps sell cars.
Get a 6 in front of it instead of a 5.
Yeah, that's fine. Just take it over that mark. The other thing is the radio. Especially in 17, I don't know if they made any changes for 18 or 19, but that radio system is archaic.
It's out of a, 14, 15 generation, like Accord or Civic. It's the previous generation Honda system. And I think for that it was, what do we have on the shelf that we can put in here? No one's going to care about it, right?
Oh, they're going to listen to the engine anyway, right? Well, that's not true because it's an everyday supercar, and we do listen to the radio. And I equate it to like an iPhone 4 or 5, and we're already on the latest version of the iPhone. The response is just a bit slow, it's a bit clunky, just not as intuitive as I would hope.
Weird haptic feedback buttons that don't always respond right away.
But like the new Civic Si, that's a great system right there. So just something that's more indicative of a 19 and up,
I think,
technology.
Have you had the chance to drive the new RDX?
I haven't.
That infotainment?
But Ed has it.
Okay, yes. That infotainment, I think, is one of the better systems on the market now. In terms of just the control, and it's got that really great kind of widescreen display. If they're doing some sort of exterior update to bring it in line with the rest of the lineup, I would be shocked if they did not also update the infotainment to again bring that in line with the rest of the lineup. For me, I've definitely heard that. For me, I plug in my phone in any car and just use Apple CarPlay, but you definitely see the maybe slower responses with the system that's currently in the car. In terms of audio, the audio system actually listening sound quality, how does that compare to some of the other cars?
I think it's fair.
Okay.
I haven't compared it to other supercars. Well, like on the Ferrari, the 458, horrible. They might as well not even put it in. The speakers are terrible, the bass response, I don't know what caliber stereo system they put in there, but it was an afterthought.
It was a Best Buy system.
But same thing with the NSX. I feel like it's okay. I think this has the upgraded sound system. And it's fair. The bass response is average, speakers are average. Here's the funny thing. The funny thing is I have a Daily, and it's made by Toyota, and it's wonderful stereo system, but it's just a general consumer car. So I kind of compare it to the two because I drive it more often. And but in fairness, you don't drive this car to listen to the audio system. I get that. But that's an area of potential improvement as well.
Well, if they want it to be a very good all-around car, it needs to be good in every aspect. Another thing with that is, this red car has a Science of Speed, I believe, downpipes and exhaust. In the other 5 or 6 cars that I've driven, I have the radio at least on while I'm driving. And it's kind of a background noise. The car's not super loud inside if you're not pretty high in the rev range. It's a fairly tame, quiet car. This car, I didn't even have the radio on the entire time that I've driven it because it doesn't need it.
You don't need it.
The burbles, the exhaust, and everything is fantastic. So something like a titanium sports exhaust would be something where if the car had just a little bit more volume to the exhaust note. It is a good exhaust note. It maybe just isn't quite loud enough.
And the turbos do take away some of that sound, but all modern vehicles that are implementing some type of forced induction that's gonna happen.
Yeah.
That's why some of these like the LC500, still has a naturally aspirated engine. The 48458 has the last of that generation for the naturally aspirated.
That car.
It is. So I understand these are changing times and emissions and power efficiency. Turbos have their place. They make a lot of sense, but they take away some of what makes a car unique in its sound. So that's okay. And then the last bit, and this is more of a nitpicky item, is just the quality of the sun visor.
Okay. Yes.
It's. I'm not sure how long that's going to actually hold up, but it was definitely an afterthought. I mean, even having it wrapped in Alcantara, having lighted mirrors, because again, it's an everyday supercar, but it just seems like a small bit. But you do touch it on occasion. It just doesn't have the quality of the feel.
I've definitely flipped it down before and realized that it doesn't even block the sun because it's only about that tall. I've had that kind of same gripe about the car as well, and that seems to be a thing actually throughout the Acura lineup. The MDX, we get complaints all the time because the visor, when you flip it down and spin it to the side, it doesn't slide back to cover the back little section of the window. So for taller drivers, it doesn't do anything on the side. And so they're having to buy like these clip-on extensions to their sun visor. I don't know what it is with Acura and sun visors, but I think they need someone new working in that department maybe.
And again, it's because it's functional. And maybe that's why you call more attention to it.
Well, like the cup holders. Well, if you use them, they mean more than, if it's something that you didn't use, you don't care about it.
Right. Yeah, and the cup holder design, again, here was a bit of an afterthought. If you have a passenger, it's probably not the most comfortable thing. But I generally have my water in a water bottle, and I stick it over to the side between the seat belt, the seat, and the door, and it seems to hold just fine. So as long as you have a closed beverage, you'll be okay.
For usability, I would love to see the door panel. You have this great wide armrest. I would love to see a little flip-up compartment there for like a wallet or keys or something that's in my pocket. You can maybe fit, if your wallet's not, if you don't have too much stuff in your wallet, you can maybe fit it in that little cubby under the door handle. But you have this great wide armrest. To have some sort of a compartment in there where you could store a couple things out of your pocket, that's potentially another area where I look at the car. I don't know if there's anything in that or if it's just hollow. If it is just hollow, I feel like it would be a good place for some additional storage on the interior.
So in the center armrest of the NSX, there is a little cubby to the back. The only challenge with that cubby is it's so far back. You can go ahead and pop the lid, but there's no way to be able to safely look at what's inside that compartment while driving. Extremely dangerous. So it's ideal that you're already parked on the side of the road before you head in and try to plug in your Apple Cord or whatever. But probably not the safest thing to do.
No. And it's some of those things that you learn, like the ergonomics of a car. The more you drive it and the more you're in it on a daily basis, when you're getting in and out of the car a couple of times, when you have a water bottle with you, when you have a passenger who maybe has a purse or a bag, where do you store these things on a day-to-day basis? If there's some stuff implemented in the car to help on that day-to-day use for a car like this, where it's meant to be day-to-day use and then it's also meant to be a fun car when you want it to be.
Absolutely.
I think some of those things could definitely be considered for the future.
And the last comment before we move off of this topic about potential improvements is maybe some protection around the heat that's generated in the trunk.
Yep.
There's jokes that we make in our group about, keeping your dinner warm, or maybe even heating up a TV dinner. Whatever you need, you can do that in the back of the trunk. So you have to be mindful what you place in there, especially if you're doing a grocery run and you've got a little box of ice cream, because that ice cream is not going to make it.
Or even if you're going on maybe like a weekend trip, don't let the
makeup?
Makeup. That's not going to be fun to have to replace the whole bag of makeup that was back there. I've definitely made that mistake as well. And
so just a little bit of humor, of course, but it's meaningful.
There are, and I'm blanking on the car now, but I was just researching. It might have been the Corvette. They actually have the new one.
Let's see.
They have some ducting to help cool the trunk so that it doesn't get too warm. I know the NSX has the ducting above the taillights, but that's not really anything that flows, internally.
Right. That's for downforce and air management.
Downforce and a couple other, brake cooling and some of that stuff. I don't know how hard it would be, but for your daily usability, it would be nice to not have. In the fall, though, it's nice to put a jacket back there, and then when you step out at a car show, you put it on. It's like it came straight out of the dryer.
Especially around here, because it gets quite cold during October.
Yes.
Okay, so the final question that I have for you, a very important one, is the Type R variant. In 2017, people were speculating, hoping, and there were even articles written online that professed to know and understand and predict the future that Type R variant will be made available. At some of these NSX expos, I've talked to some of the higher ups, and they're always tight-lipped about it, and understandably so. But it's something that keeps the brand exciting. And with the Type S release, we normally would think perhaps there will be a Type S variant available for the NSX, and if there is any variant, it'll likely be the S before being the R.
Yes.
But the holy grail is the R. The S for us will be a stepping stone. It may introduce new buyers to the Gen 2 market, but the holy grail will be the R. And so my question to you is, has there been any chatter, conversations about whether or not an R will be made available towards the end of its life cycle?
Nothing from any official channels. I've had maybe limited conversations with people that would know. Nothing official. I think if you look at the plan for the brand, specifically when John Acura kind of came into his position, it was getting back to the precision crafted performance roots. And so there was, many steps to that plan. One of them was relaunching the NSX in 2017. After that, it was bringing back the A-Spec trim level and giving people maybe a sportier looking but same performance as the standard car. Now this is kind of, I would say, really the third big phase of that, which is bringing back a Type S nameplate to the model lineup. Actually, tomorrow is when the official announcement goes live.
So March or May 28th.
Yep.
And that's at 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time?
I don't know the time.
Okay.
But I have seen some leaks out of Canada from the reveal already. The car, I think, looks great. There's some exclusive Type S colors. There's, I think, a lot to like. I'm really excited. I'll be tuned in tomorrow to what that reveal is. But they've already confirmed that we will have 2 more models getting a Type S nameplate in addition to the TLX within the next 2 years.
Okay.
That's something that Acura has come out and said there will be 2 more Type S models.
Thank you, Acura, for committing to that.
Yes.
Again, it adds some excitement and it gives some variation to the model lineup.
I think that's the middle phase. It's a really important thing to have a lineage from the NSX to the rest of the lineup. Because as you currently would look at it, the RLX hybrid, which 377 horsepower out of a big sedan, was the closest thing we had to another performance car in our lineup.
Yeah.
And that's now being killed off after the 2020 model year, so that car is no longer. They need something that's a step down from the NSX in price and performance, something that it makes sense. Where the lineup kind of builds into the NSX.
Right, because now the gap is too big.
It is. It's too big of a gap, to go from the current TLX, which is 290 horsepower, all-wheel drive, from a naturally aspirated V6 to 573 horsepower. That's a big gap. And a TLX, the PMC edition is about $51,000. These are at base price point 3 times the cost of that. The thing I'm most interested in the Type S is where is it going to be priced. I think that's going to be a very interesting and something that's telling for the future of what the brand might be doing.
Where do you estimate the price point will be?
So I think the PMC TLX was kind of a test for how can a $50,000 plus sedan sell in Acura world, because the RLX sales were so bad that they killed off the car. And so the PMCs have done very well. Our dealership has sold 3 of them for the TLXs. We sold 1 PMC MDX, and then we have another PMC TLX on our show floor. And those are all sold, MSRP. They're a numbered, hand-built, limited edition car. And so I think it was kind of like a little test for Acura. Like, hey, if we have a car that is truly special, can we sell it? I'm going to guess it's probably going to be upper 50s for a Type S. I might be a little bit surprised if it creeps into the 60s, but I think if it is there, the performance you'll be getting $60,000 worth of performance. But that's an interesting territory, because now you're talking about performance cars like the Supra, or even the base model Corvette. You're starting to get into territory of some of these other very performance-oriented cars. So it's an interesting. How do they price it? I think is.
Although I don't think they're direct competitors, though.
They're not, but it is for someone looking for a car that gives you a lot of performance, and they have $60,000 to spend. I don't think you're going to have someone necessarily cross-shopping it. But I've definitely seen it with owners of, why would I spend $100,000 on my SUV that I'm just going to drive 5 miles to work? I'd rather buy something cheaper and then buy my performance car if I'm already spending that kind of money. So someone may look at it as, well, why would I spend this on a sedan that may have some compromised performance over something that's truly built for being a all-out performance vehicle at the end of the day. So I think it's always something interesting where you do have to compare to other cars in that price segment, even if they're not true competitors. So it'll be interesting to see how that car is priced, and it'll be interesting to see what the 2 models that receive the Type S next are. It was really cool seeing the A-Spec come to everything in the lineup. If I had to make a guess, I'm going to say the RDX is going to be the next car with a Type S variant, because it's going to be coming up on its 3-year after launch in 2019. And 3 years is usually when you're going to see a little bit more of an update from Acura on their side of things. So I think adding a Type S trim to that, maybe one of them. And
if they do that, you're going to have Ed trade in the...
He's already committed to that, actually. So maybe don't tell Pam, but that was a deal when he bought that car. So...
Ed, by the way, is a good friend of ours who's a big fanatic of the NSX. He was a past president as well, and he recently picked up an RDX.
He actually has Type S badges on his RDX, if you haven't seen those. So that 3rd model, though, is up in the air. Could it be an MDX? There's 3 options: NSX, MDX, and ILX, because the RLX is no longer.
Right.
So, I mean, there's a 33% chance that you have an NSX Type S in the next 2 years. I think that would be, very interesting. I think if we were to see styling and interior updates, I think that would also be when they would introduce a performance model. And now, the car, we had 17, which was a very long model year. That was like almost a year and a half of production. 18 was a pretty short model year. 19 and 20 have both been around a year, almost exactly, of how long they'll have produced those. So you're talking 4 years in. They've done, new colors, and they did the minor suspension changes, but typically that 3 or 4 year mark is when Acura does their more significant changes to the vehicle. I'm a little bit worried about how the pandemic affects the rollout of that.
And again, if you have a gap year, they can still release the S. It'll just be an additional year after that. And I know part of the responses from current owners will be, if there are S options available, can they be purchased and retrofitted onto older models? But generally, the manufacturers don't care about that.
Yeah. It'll be very interesting to see. There was talk about the exterior changes being able to be retrofitted. Mm-hmm. So if you wanted to have, if they change up the front bumper or do something along those lines, being able to just buy those parts and swap them onto your car.
Yeah.
That was something that was kind of being thrown around with the same rumor that they were updating the look. So it'll be interesting to kind of see what happens over the next 2 years. But like the TLX was supposed to be on sale already. The car was supposed to be launched at the beginning of this year with the press release, and then it was supposed to be on sale already. And MDX, we have a brand new MDX coming out this year as well, or it was supposed to come out in around June. We haven't even heard anything about that car because this TLX has been pushed back.
Well, they typically want to phase the release so that they don't cannibalize the attention.
Exactly. And so, now that this is starting to be released, we'll probably start hearing more about the MDX, but we were supposed to have 2 new models in the first half of this year. We're already in May, and they're just announcing the release of the TLX tomorrow. We don't even know if it'll be on sale anytime soon. So it'll be interesting to see how this overall plan to really revamp the lineup and bring performance back into it, how that's been affected. I don't think we'll ultimately know on our side of things until another 2 or 3 years.
Well, there's manufacturing, there's still supply chain issues that they have to deal with. So when Acura does roll this out, they want to be able to do this in a confident fashion, knowing that they'll be able to satisfy if there is any demand for it, make sure that whoever wants it can get it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's even when you're talking about a team of engineers working, you've got to work pretty closely together to design and perfect a vehicle, and there's a lot of work that goes into that. I don't know if that's something you're able to do remotely or not. My guess would be no.
To a limited extent.
Yeah, very limited extent. And so how does that development being put on hold, how does that impact not just Acura, but all manufacturers' plans for rolling out some of these cars that have been talked about? I think there's a lot of questions about the long-term effects of this pandemic that it'll be interesting to see how they pan out.
Well, I think a lot of people are starting to understand the importance of made in the USA as well. We want to have as much independence as we can in ensuring that we have a strong economy here locally. And it was at that point, pre-pandemic, and now things have turned around quite a bit.
Yeah.
But I am pleased to hear that you've got special models being developed at PMC, which is in Ohio. That's in our backyard. And if we can get more Acuras, more cars made here, that'll reduce some of that supply chain issue.
So the interesting thing, now that the RLX is no longer being produced, that was our last model made in Japan. So after 2020, Acura will be 100% American made in their lineup. Everything from the NSX to all of our sedans and SUVs are made in the USA. And so we'll be, currently Acura, I want to say, is about the 6th most American car company if you look at just number of models produced in the US. I think they're right above like Chevy at number 6.
Yeah.
Tesla is the only one that's 100%, but with the RLX being phased out, Acura will be right there with them at 100% of production.
That's really exciting news.
It is, and people don't, for some reason that's not talked about very much, that everything but the RLX was made in the USA, and now 100% of the lineup will be made here.
Well, during this pandemic, I think there's a heightened sense of pride in being an American and ensuring that the products that we purchase are from America, because we need the help right now.
Yeah.
And we need to be able to support each other. If we're going to come out of this pandemic strong and rebuild our economy in the fastest way possible, we not only have to support our local businesses, but large businesses like Honda Acura, if they are able to ensure that we've got good quality workers providing amazing products that are still at the Acura Honda level, right? That's not compromised in any way. Then I think Americans will be proud to support Acura and Honda as a brand. I
agree. I think when people learn that about their Acura, I think you can kind of see they get a sense of pride of like, oh yeah, I always kind of joke with customers like, hey, you're getting great Japanese reliability, but you're getting made in the USA. And so it's a great thing for the brand. Every year Honda sends out a brochure to dealers about just everything that Honda does, from their small gas engines to their actual Honda cars to the Acura cars, and what they're doing in the U.S. economy. It's something they're really proud of, but I don't know that it's really shown to the public or the consumer as much as it should be. So
yeah, don't keep it a secret.
Yeah,
these are top of mind talking points for Americans nowadays, and so I think you should put that in your marketing material, or definitely as you meet with new clients and prospective buyers at the dealerships, to inform them of how these cars are being built. Very, very important.
It is. It's very important.
Good. Well, David, I really appreciate that you've taken the time to come out and talk with me about these various topics in the Acura lineup, of course. And with the new reveal of the Type S coming out tomorrow, my hope is to be able to come to your dealership to take a look at the car, get a tour of it, of course, and maybe invite you back to the channel to talk about the new model.
Absolutely. I'd love to bring one here someday and kind of show it off. And, I would hope we're going to have if we can, and we're allowed under the conditions, have maybe a little reveal party when we have those Type S's coming in.
Yeah, so maybe we'll invite the NSX guys.
Absolutely, maybe. we don't know.
If they're good, if they respond.
Exactly. It's an exciting time for us as a brand. It's an exciting time for us as a dealership too. We talked a little bit about it earlier with, how are we adapting? And one of the cool new things that I wanted to share with, you and everyone was that we have a new technology now that allows about 80 or 90% of your car buying process to be done online from the comfort of your own home. And so everything from kind of researching the different models and trim levels to comparing how a lease or a finance might benefit you in the different pricings and how your down payment might impact that, to actually securing financing and choosing your accessories to personalize your vehicle, and protecting your vehicle with something like a service contract or something like maybe a gap policy. That can all be done online. If you go to our website, there's an express store. You can click on that, complete everything through that computer. By the time you come into the dealership, we just have your car ready, you sign a couple pieces of paper, and you're on your way. And so that's something that we just rolled out this month that we're really, really excited about, not just during these current times, but for the future of just the car buying process. If we can refine our business, make the customer experience a little bit smoother. I know the thing that everyone hates is sitting at a dealership for 4 hours while they're picking up their car. We want you to get in, get the car exactly how you want it, and get on the road and enjoy it. So we're really excited about that, that feature being rolled out, and excited to see how it impacts the business and how it might help us.
I hope it's very effective for you guys. And again, it's just adjusting to the times and ensuring that people still have a good, valuable purchasing experience. So that's great. Good. Well, thank you again. I appreciate it. Oh, I'm not going to do it. We'll do elbow bumps.
We almost.
Yeah, it's just so second nature to do that. Handshakes are primary for us.
Well, in the car business, especially. I mean, that's just when someone buys a vehicle. It's just hey, congratulations. It's just I almost have to, if I'm not holding something, I always will. So I try and make sure whenever I'm with a customer, I have an iPad, or I've even gone out with a blank piece of paper just so I have something in my hands. So that I'm not. It's definitely strange. But thank you.
But I'm hoping that a year, 2 years from now, this elbow bump thing will just be laughable. Oh, there was a time they used to do that, and now we've gone back to just traditional handshake, or maybe even a pat on the back or a hug.
Well, there'll be a couple movies that come out that you'll see everyone doing the elbow bump and everything, and in 20 years we'll look back and just be like, man, that was...
What a wild time.
Yeah.
Who knows? But thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
It was a pleasure.